Hey, Penn, Ohio family. It's Mike Odell here. Today, we're going to do something a little different. I wanted you to meet Greg Shupinas from Elite Edge Sharpening. Greg is going to sharpen some knives for me. And while this isn't directly related to telecommunications, we do work with a lot of tools that are edged, whether it's cording tools or fiber preparation tools, as well as traditional bladed tools. And so it is important to have a sharp tool, whether it's a knife or something else. So Greg is going to actually sharpen some of my blades. But Greg, thanks for taking the time and meeting with us today and showing us a little bit of your setup here.
Hey,
And
glad to do it, Mike. Mike and I just recently met through a friend of a friend, and Mike decided to bring some of the more difficult knives to sharpen today, like serrated knives for some reason. He likes serrated knives evidently. But I've been doing this for several years. Started out basically sitting at my dining room table in the winter months, nothing to do, and I've always been a knife fanatic. I'm just sitting at the table in the evening sharpening knives to pass time rather than watching Mike's YouTube channel because I didn't know about it then. But now moved that to the basement, small shop. Started out sharpening for family and friends, and that accelerated relatively rapidly as soon as you put a small liner ad or a Facebook page up. It spreads like wildfire. And I've been fortunate. It's one of the nicest businesses you can do part-time, full-time. It may take a half an hour a day to do. It may take no time to do because you just don't have a customer that day. But some weeks you can do really well at it. And it's a nice additional income to the family. And when you enjoy doing it, it's not so much work. It's nice to be able to take a dull object or something that's damaged and within a few minutes bring it back and breathe new life into it. It really, it's gratifying to me to see quick results with anything I do. Um, I don't have the patience to be an artist or a painter, or even paint the walls of my house. That's what my wife does, all the painting. I like instant gratification when it comes time to getting work done. And the knife business really fits the detail in that for me. Lots of different ways to sharpen. Basically started out with some simple objects that anyone could buy. Well, anyone could buy any of this stuff, but relatively $100 bill, you have a sharpening system that if you're patient, you can do a really good job. Evolved into some more expensive stones, much more expensive that really does a nice job, and I utilize the Wicked Edge sharpening system a lot these days for the higher end knives, specialty knives, one-off knives, custom knives. But most of the sharpening is done on belts around here. There are some other specialty tools for scissors and shears, for chisels, there's whetstones, but the whole idea wraps around the fact that it's really important to have objects that make your day easier. Whether you're opening a cardboard box or in most of your guys' cases, splicing wires. Your tools are what make your day go smooth. If you're driving to work and your car breaks down because you don't have a reliable vehicle, you're going to be late. If you're fumbling to cut something, to dig something, to chop something, to split something with a dull object, it really adds a burden to your day, and it's also a lot more dangerous.
yeah, the likelihood of injuring yourself with a dull object is actually higher,
Yes,
ironically enough.
yeah, and axes, or I do a lot of axes and hatchets, and I see a lot of really bad ones, and there are some really bad injuries from dull ones because it lances off the object, the log in that case. Um, but it's important to have sharp stuff to do a good job in the kitchen. If you're butchering chickens, slicing vegetables, it's way safer to have something that is sharp and it doesn't lance off and end you up with a cut thumb like my wife often does because I don't sharpen her knives.
So, funny story about that. My grandfather used to, my dad's dad had a passion for sharp knives, and my grandmother used to dull them after he would sharpen. He would take them out of the drawer and sharpen them and put them back into the drawer. And the one time he caught her, back in the old days, they had aluminum edging
around the
around
countertops
the
for
countertops.
mica tops.
She
Yep.
would take the knives out of the
And
drawer and run them
run them
over
up
the
and
aluminum
down.
edging to dull them up before she used them. And it's so funny. But bladed objects historically have an interesting context to me because they're some of the most oldest tools in the world.
Yeah, our ancestors definitely weren't throwing blunt objects at woolly mammoths.
Exactly.
I mean, oh,
Whether
maybe a rock, but when they decided to spear it, they figured to sharpen it.
right, and they would nap flint or something similar to
Yeah.
create a serrated edge, which is very very ancient.
Yep. So
Um,
yeah, serrated
as
edge.
and
Yeah,
nap flint to create a sharp edge.
it goes way back, and it's the first useful tool modern mankind has discovered in the prehistoric age is a sharp object,
Yeah,
and they're still used today. Now, of course, there's super steels today, whether it's S30V or MagnaCut is the new super steel that a lot of companies are using. MagnaCut is absolutely phenomenal steel. If they made lineman's pliers with MagnaCut, you probably never need to have them sharpened. I don't see a lot of them, but phenomenal steels today. Some of my favorite steels, 1095 high carbon. It sharpens great. It holds a pretty good edge, but it's easy to sharpen. It doesn't roll an edge. And tool steel, of course, you guys are around tool steel a lot. Sharpens relatively easy, doesn't fold an edge very easily. It's easy to maintain if you maintain it. If you neglect it, then you have a little bit of work on your hands,
yeah.
like Mike's knives.
Well, now in fairness, I have a lot of them, so I can only carry one at a time. So I literally need one to be sharp at any given time.
But we'll sharpen the smallest one. Well, serrated knives are a little bit of a pain in the butt because there are tools, wheels that are designed to cut into the serrations. Typically, around here, we'll use files or something as simple as a $10 tool just to raise a burr on the inside, and then knock that burr off. And you can see this has been sharpened on a sharpener at one point here somehow.
I do have a wheel in my garage.
Yeah.
I admit, and files.
And
So
files, yeah.
I try to
Yeah, you
polish
get
the
in there
back
and
edge
polish the back edge and
and
knock
then
the burr
file the
back,
front.
which
Yeah.
is that's fine. Mike brought some scissors so his wife could wrap his Christmas gifts that are a little bit dull. But basically, 1x30 machines are real popular in the industry. I do have more of these. I'm not real fond of them because they're big, they're noisy, and I have a really small shop. So simple 1x18, same width belt, just not as long, works really well. And there's different angles for Mike's everyday carry knife when he's working at the home office. Pretty straightforward. Something like this, we'll put it like a 17-degree bevel, and that'll give a good utility edge on it. Tools vary. Clippers, these are a little difficult to sharpen because typically with these, less is more. Less material you take off is more. And
Yeah, those are my daughter. She's an esthetician.
oh,
So those are hers.
so there lots of yeah, lots of different angles and lots of different tools and tricks. Some stuff is real easy. Some stuff can take a lot of time to sharpen to do a good job. But the idea of tool maintenance is huge. You start out with a relatively, probably a pair of garage or old kitchen scissors that have been floating around Mike's house for a while, and it gets a little bit of corrosion on it. There's simple tasks you can do.
Those might be older than me, Greg.
These probably are.
Those are a family heirloom passed down among
So
generations.
usually you can clean them up pretty quick. This is just a Scotch-Brite 600 grit Scotch-Brite wheel. And it's going to make a little bit of noise, a little bit of dust. So if Mike misses work for the next week, it means he inhaled some bad dust. Yeah, but a simple task. Hitting them on the wheel will kind of get them a nice polish again. Just a satin finish on them. And it can kind of clean them up. And this part doesn't really add to the performance, but it makes the customer feel good when they get their knives back or their old scissors back that are a little bit cleaner than they were when you brought them in. It doesn't take much. And these wheels are going away from me. Otherwise, you'd have kickback and it would be pretty dangerous. And that just cleans up the outside of the scissor. And we can do the same thing with knife blades. We do that pretty often. There are machines for scissors, which we'll maybe look at. But we'll start with Mike's everyday carry knife.
Now you mentioned different angles. Is the angle of the edge important to depending on the tool?
Very important. Different tools have different angles for different reasons. Kitchen knives, most kitchen knives I sharpen at 15 degrees. Certain brands like Henkel's kitchen knives might do a 17-degree edge, which is more of a utility edge because it's a $200 set of knives or a $300 set of knives, which isn't, in the grand scheme of things, a very expensive set of kitchen knives. So they know the customer's not going to spend money sharpening them often. So they put a little bit steeper angle on there to make the edge hold up a little bit longer. Western knives, typically 17-degree edge. Utility knives, you can go 17 to 20. Everyday carry knives, 17 to 20. Most hunting knives are 18 to 20 degrees. Most of my customers rather have them be sharper. So we'll do a 15 to 17 on most of my customers' knives. The one butcher shop I sharpen for, everything gets sharpened at 16.5 degrees, except for the one fellow, he likes 20. So I'll do a bunch of knives at 16.5 degrees, and the last one out of 20 or 30 knives has to be 20, so I have to change all the angles and everything. But it makes a huge difference on edge retention. Axes, you kind of, you don't want a 15-degree bevel on an axe, of course.
Right.
But you should still be able to shave with an axe when it's sharp, which maybe we'll show you guys later on Mike's beard. I have a couple over there that might be sharp enough right now. But do you want to see how to sharpen a knife?
Yeah.
So we'll kind of give you the quick run. This is starting out we're going to start out with a 125 grit belt. And these belts have a little bit of life left in them. They're not real toothy. Actually, let me for the sake of the camera, we're going to grab a fresh belt. So I usually go.
All right. I'm gonna reposition a little bit and get maybe more in here. So I did pause for a moment. All right.
Grit after that, and then we just remove the burr after that. In Mike's case, since I like him, we'll start out with the 120, we'll go 600, and then we'll go up to 1200, depending on the knives. But most people's kitchens, you stop at a 600 grit belt, remove the burr, polish the edge, and you can slice paper with it, which you can still do if I polish the edge after 120 grit, I can shave with it. But it's a little bit too toothy for most people, so. And we're just looking for that little bit of a burr to form on the edge.
And that burr comes from the abrasive pulling
Yep, and it's
material
just
off the front of the edge.
flipping the edge up over the apex. You can see it popping up. So once we get a uniform burr, now if there's a nick in the knife, you can see it. That burr won't pop up where the nick is. So then you got to remove enough material to basically remove that nick that's in there. So from there we'll go to a 600, and we'll put a fresh 600 on there too, because fresh belts do make a big difference. So those are Cubitron belts, the 120. These are called Trizac belts. And Trizac belts are basically chemically grown belts. Everything is in a very symmetrical pattern. All the abrasive is very symmetrical. When you have a Cubitron belt or a piece of sandpaper, It's just a bunch of grit thrown onto a piece of paper, and it's random. So you may have some spots with more higher grit. So basically 120 grit, we have 120 pieces of abrasive per square inch. This is 600, but it's very symmetrical, so it gives you a very uniform scratch pattern. And that makes a big difference in edge retention, and overall look. And the belts last a long time. I can probably do 8 to 10 knives, full, bigger knives on a belt like this before I would throw it away. And that's 600, and then we're going to bump it up to a fresh 1200.
No, that's still sharpening. You haven't got into the polishing phase
Yeah,
yet,
this
right?
is just sharpening now. I can knock the burr off and it's sharp. The polishing is more for aesthetics. Some of the chef's knives, people just like that highly polished edge. A lot of your expensive custom knives, everyday carry knives or hunting knives, it's nice to have that high polished edge. You put that much more time into something. So you did a good job, but then the customer, you go one step above and beyond what anyone else would do. And that polished edge just looks nice, and the customer knows that you paid great attention to detail. Anyone can sharpen a knife on a Waterstone from Harbor Freight, and you get a pretty good edge if you put 20 or half minutes or half an hour into it. But
Yeah.
when you get something back that looks nice, it makes everyone feel good. And whether it's in my other line of work, bicycles, I can do a tune-up on a bicycle and not wipe the bicycle down when I'm done. But if I wipe it down and clean it up real nice, it makes the customer feel good, which is it's important. Um, if you guys do any type of work in people's homes, if you track mud into people's homes, they don't feel good. If you put those
Right.
little booties on your boots before you walk in the house, they feel good.
That's right. Now, in fairness, I didn't tell him about the booty, so obviously he's had a cable guy at his house before, and they
Yeah,
probably
put the
did or
booties on.
didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
anytime someone services, and they're good to have. I actually have some in the garage.
they are. They're
For the
handy to
few
have.
times that I go into people's house in the winter to pick up knives or do something else, I put them on my feet because it makes people feel good. I'm not a big take my shoe off kind of guy,
Yeah,
because we're all human, and who cares a little bit of dirt? We just sweep it up.
yeah.
This is 1200 grit. And it's hard to tell, but I'm holding the knife parallel to the workbench. Your idea that you can hold something level without a level on it, we can all do it.
Yeah.
That's 1200. So from 1200, there's a couple other steps that we do, and leather belts. But what I like to do before the leather belt does do a good job at removing burrs on knives, but there's a burr that's lifted up. It's folded over the apex of the edge. So this is a Scotch-Brite belt. And basically all this is doing is loosening up that burr. So when I touch it on the leather, the burr will come off and give you a clean apex edge. And that's what gives you your razor's edge when you're done. And then with the leather belt, I use a diamond emulsion, which is 0.5 micron diamond dust mixed with alcohol, just to suspend the diamond dust in. And just put a little bit of that on your belt. You don't need a whole lot. A little dab will do you. It's not the most expensive diamond in the world, but it's not that inexpensive. But a little bit goes a long way. If I have 10 knives here, I can do 10 knives with what I just put on this belt, and before I need to reapplicate it. And do that at a little bit lower speed. And this is what will give us that polished edge.
So you just knocked the burr off of it with the other one.
I knocked the burr off, and there might still be a little burr hung up on here. And when I come in, I'm not coming in at that same parallel to the table angle, because leather belts are flexible. And you don't want to wrap that burr around what's remaining. So I come in at a little bit less of an angle. So if this is 16 degrees, now I'm 17 degrees. Just so that leather doesn't wrap around the edge. I don't want to rule the apex of the edge over.
So the leather itself is non-abrasive, but the diamond dust.
The diamond is, yep. And
is.
I do have other leather belts that I do use with some just green or white polishing compound, and that does a great job. The diamond emulsion is just that step that's above and beyond. And then every knife, even though I use that, I always come back to the good old leather strop, because I can knock this on the corner, because there could potentially be a little bit of burr that you don't see. And if a customer gets it back and tries to cut something, it may not cut as well as you hoped it would. So this is just one more level of reassurance that I am taking that burr completely off.
So this is fascinating to me, because it's kind of a romantic. Back in the old days when you would go to the barber shop and they used straight razor knives to shave with, they always had a leather strop that they would touch up their straight razor with.
And realistically, like my everyday carry knife and most of my tools at work don't need to be sharpened very often with the process that I just went through, because I just constantly maintain that stuff. I have a small pocket sharpener at work. It's a small version of this. There's a 200 grit and a 600 grit, and there's a leather strop on it. So throughout the day, and I probably use my everyday carry knife at work, whether I'm opening a tape box or plastic bags. No real heavy hard task, but if I just every day just touch it up with that leather strop with some compound on it, it doesn't need to be diamond dust, it could just be block rubbing compound, maintain the edge. And I probably sharpen my everyday carry knife once or twice a year through this process, because every knife does have a useful lifespan, just like every tool does. Before you go, it's just not, it's beyond sensible repair. And whether it's a knife or a pair of lineman's pliers or a crimping tool, at some point it's going to wear out to the point where you just have to replace it.
Well, hopefully this one isn't dead yet. This is my everyday baler twine in the barn.
This is, I don't normally shave, but it shaves. So. Yeah, so Mike can have it. He can go to work tomorrow now, which is good.
Nice. Oh yeah.
And it doesn't take much. I mean, anybody could do what I'm doing. Any of us could do what anybody's doing, really. But it's just how much time do you want to invest in your passions to get good at something. And when I first started doing this, that process would have taken me literally 15 minutes or 20 minutes, going back quite a few years back. But you educate yourself, and I still watch YouTube videos. There's a couple guys on YouTube that I watch. That one guy, Cliff Curry, he's the sharpening master, and he uses 1x30 belts. He started out with Harbor Freight 1x30s and created a sharpening empire. And all the belts that you see hanging up in here come from Cliff Curry in Hawaii. So everything I order comes from Cliff Curry, because there's no belts that are better. So by watching him now, I'm his customer. Yeah. But just that continual education, there's always stuff I'm learning just from studying, whether it's YouTube or reading. Now, of course, there's not a lot of magazines out there in the cable business. or in
There are a few.
there's
You'd be
magazines?
surprised, yeah. The Broadband Library is actually a magazine that comes out still. I grew up reading telecommunications magazines. They're still out there, but more to your point, most everything has gone digital.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of e-magazines or videos or other types of things. But the the point that I want to walk away from this is that you, like any industry, if you're dedicated to improving your craft, which takes time and effort and diligence and continual improvement to become a master sharpener, which
Yeah,
I will tell you, this thing is wicked sharp.
and being proficient at anything, like Mike, I found out shoots traditional archery like I do, and dabbles in it. And if a guy just thinks he can go pick up a bow and be proficient at it, he's mistaken. So
Correct.
it's constant practice, and I've been shooting traditional archery since I was 14 years old. I'm 48 now. And I'm still learning. Now I'll watch guys on YouTube that may or may not be a better shot than me, but I can always grasp something from them.
That's right.
It's just neat to see people's perspective. I'm always very inquisitive when I meet people, rather in my sharpening business or with the bike shop I work for. I'm very inquisitive. What type of work do you do? It's so neat to see how many different attributes people can carry with them and make a living doing it
Yeah.
and embrace their career and enjoy doing it. I mean, some people just go to work and clock in and clock out, but when I come home in the evenings and after a 9, 10 hour day or 11-hour day in the summer months and the bicycle business is real busy, come home and go, oh, I have 2 hours of sharpening to do tonight. But you don't mind it,
Yeah.
as long as one of the kids cut the grass before I got home.
That's right. That's me on the farm at home.
Which is more difficult now since our lawn tractor's broke. Um, but we'll get to fixing that another time. Um, so scissor sharpening, if you want to see a quick excerpt of that.
Yes, this will make my wife very happy. Those scissors, we've had them for forever. I can't actually remember. We've been married for 33 years. Our kids are all now grown and out of the house. But there's a couple of these pairs of scissors that I brought that I cannot ever remember not having. I don't know when we got them or where we got them, but it seems like they've been around forever.
Most people scissors have, and there's little tools to the trade that I didn't show you, but this is an inexpensive digital microscope. It's 1,000 times, and it's neat. And I won't do it now, but you can inspect your work beforehand and after, so you can actually see that burr on the knife through the digital microscope. And it's not an expensive tool. They're inexpensive. You can buy them on Amazon, but you can see the 50 years of usage on a pair of scissors that probably cost $3 back then.
Yeah, probably.
So this basically looks like a glorified grinder. I'm actually going to have to switch my eyeglasses here. I think Mike and I talked about bifocals the other day.
Put on the high-powered goggles.
Yeah, high-powered super goggles. I'm not much of a bifocal guy, but we're going to put them on so I can see what I'm doing. So scissors are just like a knife. You're trying to raise a burr and then clean it off an apex. Now these ones are pretty beat up. So what I do just with the Sharpie is cover the cutting edge. So we have to make sure we get the correct angle on it. Yeah, these ones have seen some use.
In probably 5 decades of use.
Yeah, so these are just a regular beveled scissor. Now, hairstylist shears, I can do them on the same machine, but the wheels get changed. So this is just a 100 grit wheel, and this is a polishing wheel. When we do hairstylist shears, basically they're convex on the inside, and there's what's called a ride line, goes all the way around the perimeter, and you need to flatten that ride line, take the shear completely apart to do the ride line, and then micro bevels all the way, and then you polish it out so you can continue that convex look to the shear the way it was designed. A beveled shear like this, we're simply trying to figure out what angle it was and just match that angle.
Well, we may have some esthetician shears for you at some point. As I mentioned, I have one of those.
Now, we could definitely do them. This is about a 30-degree bevel here. So, and it's pretty quick with this. You don't want to remove, you can never put material back. I think if you cut the wrong cable, you can put it back, but now you're going to have it's going to look sloppy.
In it,
yeah, have a splice somewhere in the middle. So basically that whole measure twice, cut once scenario. And these could be different angles on each side. So you're just doing a real light pass, and then you inspect it. And I can see I removed the material. My line is gone that I painted on with the Sharpie marker. Now these are pretty beat up, so it's going to take a couple passes.
My wife will be so happy, Greg.
And you do real light passes. And I can't feel the burr there yet. So it's going to be just like the knife. You're waiting for that burr. Now it's not as pronounced on a pair of scissors. I'm just starting to feel it. Just need a little bit more. Yeah, I can just feel a little burr there. We'll do one more on this side. Yeah, we got a good burr there. It's very hard to feel. You can feel it with your finger now. And then we just flip everything over and we're just going to polish that. And for some reason, this abrasive wheel, which is just a polishing wheel, smells just like if you're in a dental office and they're grinding on your tooth. Don't know why, but it's not very, doesn't taste very good, that smell. So we got a nice burr there. So now we're going to move to the other side of this. And same idea. We just do a kind of a quick clamp, and then we can just check it. So this does have a little bit different angle here. And most of your modern day like Fisker scissors that you can get at the hardware store or craft store that are $10 or $12, most of those have the same edge on both sides. So those are a little bit faster to do.
Now, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to employ you to sharpen tools or knives or other instruments, how would they get a hold of you?
You could find me on Facebook at Elite Edge Knife Sharpening. It is a private group. Just ask to join, and I inspect your profile quickly to make sure it's a legit person and not a hacker. That was kind of the downfall to my little Facebook page there. It got hacked one time, and that's what made me determine I needed to make it a private group instead of a public group. So it does make it a little bit more difficult. They can always call me, 330-619-0470, and leave a message because I do work a day job.
As most of us do.
As most of us have to do. You have to work a day job to pay for all your sharpening equipment. We're going to do a real light pass to inspect, and this one's real. She must have wrapped a lot of Christmas presents for you over the years. That these are as dull as they are. Yeah. And sometimes they get a little hot. This does spin around 3,000 RPMs. You could just probably use alcohol because it evaporates quick. And
we actually use really high percentage alcohol in some fiber optic cleaning applications.
Wipe stuff down before you put it together.
Because it does evaporate, and in those scenarios, those fibers are actually ridiculously small. The core of that is smaller than a human hair, and so a microscopic speck of dust on the end face of a fiber will actually impact protect the ability to transmit light through it.
Even like a molecule of water
Oh, water is, yeah,
is
terrifically
the kiss
bad.
of death for it.
Yeah, because it can actually diffract the light as the water goes through it. Water is also not good in connectors. Now, on a unbroken, optic fiber, it can be submerged in water and it's
And it's
unaffected.
unaffected.
But anywhere where there's unions, they're connectorized together, the light actually transmits across an open air gap.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's very, very small,
But it's
but
an
it is
open
an
air gap.
actual air gap. And so any water or
Is the
dust,
inside of the connector reflective in any way? That it?
yeah, it's actually fascinating. So there's in a fiber optic cable is made of two different pieces of glass. The core of the glass is one density of glass, but then they wrap it with another glass layer that completely surrounds the inner core. That's a different density of glass. And so those two densities of glass where they come together
Yeah.
actually create a reflective surface. So it's
It's,
kind of like a
it's,
mirror.
but it's not getting much distortion then
No, no.
because
So
of
the
the way it's
light can
double wrapped.
actually bounce around
Yeah,
inside of it between those two refractive indices of glass. And that's how your light actually travels through a piece of fiber.
that's amazing.
It really is. And
I've never thought about fiber optics much. And well, the other day I was looking at our fiber optic Christmas tree at work, and I just put my finger on the end, going, "That's it's amazing to me."
yeah,
And I always thought they should make bicycle spokes out of fiber, the line. Years ago, they used to make Kevlar spokes. They were Kevlar string. They would lace bicycle wheels out of it. And I remember this is going way back 30 years ago, hearing that when fiber optics was first coming out, how strong it was, the tensile strength.
yeah.
Um, but I guess if it was that strong, I could use it for fishing line too.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're good there. So we polish this edge pretty quick. And the idea of polishing the edge on a pair of beveled scissors like this isn't to make the customer feel good. It actually adds a lot to the function. So now we have a burr on the inside of both of these. So there's two ways to remove the burr. You can kind of spread these apart so I'm not cutting the burr. And then once I close them, I'm pinching them together. So I'm pulling that burr off. And I'll do that 2 or 3 times, 4 times. And that removes most of the burr that way. Other way is just a piece of leather. Works real well. 10-ounce leather, and just pull it through, and that'll get rid of that burr real quick. I do that a lot on some knives. Are real stubborn, just depending on the quality of the steel that they used. Now Mike's tips aren't closing all the way here, so they've been dropped a few times. We're not going to try to straighten them because I think these are casted and they could break. So we're going to leave those the way they are. But other way people remove burrs is paper towels. You get a double thickness of paper towel and just cut the burr off that way. Works real well. So Mike's wife has one sharp pair of scissors now, and Mike has one sharp knife. And a couple more in the bucket over there for him.
That's more than we walked in here with.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, it's with anything. Just do your research and practice.
Practice.
Doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're sharpening, shooting bows, or running cables.
There you go. All right, Greg. Well, thank you very much for taking us inside your operation here at Elite Edge Knife Sharpening. Appreciate your time and educating us on the importance of sharp-bladed tools.
I appreciate you coming by, Mike. Great to get to know you.
All
You're
right.
like my brother from another mother.